name is Mr. Jeff Peckham.
My name is Tateum Bowers.
My name is Melissa Garlock.
My name's Karen Owens.
I am a 1997 Palmer graduate.
I was a student here in the late 70s, 77 through 79 to be exact.
I was a student at Palmer from 2000 to 2004.
I was a student from fall of 91 until May of 1994. Now I'm one of 2 library technology educators, which means with Mr. Van Kirk I oversee library operations, and we also, with Ms. Vi as well, handle all the tech in the building. But we're also teachers, so we get to teach research and reasoning skills and literacy, information literacy, so that's the best part of the job. I was part of the first IB class. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Palmer was constantly on the chopping block.
And at that time, there was talk about potentially combining schools in District 11.
It was a school that was constantly in danger of being closed.
Palmer was not the great school that it is today.
A group of teachers and administrators got together, Mr. Schultzke was one of them, and decided to bring in the IB program. And it was Palmer's big renaissance.
And it was the bringing of the IB program in that really sort of turned the school and made it like the academic institution that it is today.
So when I came, that was the beginning of really transforming Palmer from low enrollment, failing test scores, all of that, to the academic institution it is now. The IB program was really instrumental in that.
So the IB program had only been around at Palmer for a couple of years. You know, IB kids are less segregated now than they were then. And so I really only knew those 80 kids. I think kind of the biggest hubbub when I was a student here, which is going to sound ridiculous to you now, there were boys who were upset because they were hot in their pants. And so they wanted to make a point and they started wearing skirts to school. For whatever reason, it was a really big deal. And they were sent home and they weren't allowed to come to school in their skirts. And then eventually, I think they ended up being allowed to come to school in their skirts, but it was a really big deal for some reason. And I'm not really sure why now, you know, as you look back on it.
I was such a good kid, so all of my stories are school appropriate. I was here, however, though, when the school went through actually some legal suits in order to have GSTA. When I was on the lever, that was something that we covered heavily because the ACLU was brought in and everything, and so even though we had a lot of diversity at Palmer at the time, it's celebrated so much more now because of everything that the school and the district has gone through.
Well, IB didn't exist at the time. I do think by and large that students were they were more into particular groups at that time that you don't see today. And there were names for the groups. There was a group that was very much into rodeo at that time, and we called them the Goat Ropers. They were very much more separate at that time. When I was here, I was very lucky because I came to Palmer kind of as a surprise. We got a call from the district saying, you're not going to Wasson, you're going to Palmer. And it was really the one place that I felt at home, and I felt like you know, I was really doing some good things. You know, I was just kind of a regular student. The one thing I excelled at was music. My senior year, I had 4 music classes and a history. And that's how I did my senior year, which for me, that was what was supposed to happen.
Our athletics were really superior back then. I mean, I was trying to count all of the state championships we had when I was a student here, and I'm not sure how many there were. There were at least 4 that I can think of off the top of my head. When one of our teams won a state championship, the next day you would come to school and there was a big pep assembly, and then we were released for the day. And there was no classes. I mean, we were a team to be feared.
One of the things that was always the same with Palmer was the fact that history and tradition, always a big deal. That has never changed. I got to meet teachers from the 30s and 40s. who were still alive and who were still around, and got to talk to them. I think one of the things that did stay consistent, and is still consistent today, two things, is I really believe that the teachers here and the teachers back then, they cared about their students, and they really wanted them to excel, and they tried to hold high standards to make that happen. I think by and large that's still true. You know, I would hope my students know that I care about them, but I also hope that they understand that I want them to be excellent in what they do.
Even back then, it was known as a school of great diversity and great culture.
But the diversity at the school is very similar.
Even then, diversity was very much the same.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. And that's what I love about this school. I love our big wide halls and our lockers, and you know, it's so antiquated, which sometimes is frustrating, but it's also that sense of history.
You know, when I stepped into that choir room, again as an educator compared to a student, one of the first things that I remembered was that was a home for me. You know, that was a place where I knew I was accepted, where I knew that I could do good work, and where I knew that I could really excel. And when I stepped in as a teacher, one of my goals was to make that room a home for my students. And that is really, in a sense, carrying on a tradition.
Palmer's the dream job. We really are a very unique school in this city. I really wanted to teach high school, but the only way I was going to leave the job I was at, because it was a good job that I really enjoyed, was to come to Palmer, and I got a job at Palmer. And I literally said in my interview, when they asked why I wanted to come to Palmer, that this is the dream job.
I didn't come back until I started teaching at Palmer. When I interviewed, I think it was 4 years ago. And I came in, and it was interesting because some things haven't changed. Freshman hall is freshman hall. Junior hall is junior hall. Sophomore hall is sophomore hall. Senior hall is senior hall. It's been that way forever.
Like any high school student, there was good and bad. You know, there were good days and there were bad days. But what came back was the good things, and so many good memories that really started me on my path.
And even when I was teaching middle school, I knew I always wanted to be at Palmer. I don't know that I'll ever leave Palmer. I think I'll probably retire from here.
It's so diverse, and I think teachers have quite a bit of autonomy.
There's just something really special about Palmer. I think I'm a lifer, so it's a good place to be.
I mean, I've been in District 11 now for 27 years, and really, you know, being in this district, Palmer was my only choice, because I'd had other offers, and I just said, no, you know, I'm going to bide my time, and I'm going to wait, and you know, I really want to come back, and essentially it boils down to me giving back what I got.
The fact that teachers who I had when I went here are still here says a lot about this school, so it's a great place to work. The rest of my K-12 teaching time will definitely be here.
Coming back to Palmer, it's a very special place, and it is very different than the other high schools in the area. Understanding the history and the legacy and what has gone before, no place else around here has that. To have an experience both as an educator and as a student with that kind of environment, that's a special thing. You won't ever encounter that anyplace else in the way that we do it here. And I think that's unique. And I think to be a part of a unique environment is a good thing.